Are you ready to learn the 8 simple steps to creating a lucrative real estate business? If so, keep watching. Hi, my name is Peter Bowman. I'm a real estate millionaire. I have completed tens of millions of dollars worth of real estate transactions and developments, and I'm here today to share with you the 8 simple steps that you need to learn to build a very successful real estate business. Rather than jump into it blindly, I'm going to share these 8 simple steps with you that have been proven to work time and time again. So if you want to make the best of the potential available in real estate investing, let's get started. So first of all is you need to understand what is your end goal. I talk to a lot of people in real estate and often their answer is, well, to make money. Well, of course, we all know you want to make money, but is your priority cash flow or is it capital gains? This is a really crucial distinction at the start because it's going to help dictate what kind of projects or what kind of properties you are chasing. As an example, if you already have a large capital base, so you already have a fair amount of money, let's say you have $1 million or $2 million, then you're not too worried about building your capital base most likely. You can basically take that money, deploy it effectively into cash flowing assets, and you're done. However, for most of us when we start out, we're not starting with $1 or $2 million. We're starting with nothing. That's where I was starting. So first of all, we need to build our capital base and then look at transferring that into cash flow assets. Understanding this is really, really important because you can end up buying the wrong kinds of deals or the wrong kinds of properties. As an example, if you have very limited capital to start with and you go and buy yourself a cash flowing property, how do you move into the next one? It can be done, but it typically means you're going to have to wait for the market to do its work and raise the value of that property so you can use the equity or sell that property to access that capital gains, as opposed to creating your own capital gains so you can leverage off that property and use that as a springboard into the next one. So start with growth, then focus on cash flow. Now, the logical follow-on question there is, when do you know to change focus? When do you shift from capital growth into cash flow? And that's a really important question too, and it does come back to what your ultimate goal is. First of all, you need to decide what is your ultimate cash flow goal. At the end of the day, we are all after cash flow. No matter what anyone says, capital gains doesn't really pay the bills that well and it's very lumpy. It's great for lump sums, but we have expenses to pay every single week. So ultimately, we're all after cash flow at some point. So if you know how much cash flow you need, you've made the first step. If you don't, figure that out. What is your goal? How much cash flow do you need to live comfortably? If that number is $100,000, for example. So you've determined $100,000 is your ultimate goal. The next question is, what return do you know how to get on your cash? Now, for those of you that are starting out, that may be whatever the interest rate they're paying at the bank is. So that might be 2, 3, 4%. Now, for others that have been doing this a little while, you've probably seen more possibility in real estate and you can see how you can achieve a 10% return on your cash. And for those that have been in this for a while, you will know how to get 20+% returns on your cash. But whatever the return is that you know how to get, use that to figure out what your capital base is. And I'll give you an example. So if you have $1 million and you can get a 10% return on your $1 million, there's your $100,000 cash flow. So we work it backwards. First, figure out what the cash flow is you need. Second, look at what is the return you know how to get. That's going to tell you the capital base you need. Now, if you are in the position where you're just starting out and you only know how to get 3 or 4% on your money, that may seem a little bit daunting because if you need $100,000 cash flow and you can only get 3%, that's telling you you need $3.33 million. That may seem a little bit scary and maybe a bit demotivating. If that's the case, I would suggest working on 10% because after not too long in the real estate game, you'll realize that getting 10% on your cash is very achievable. Certainly over time, 20% plus returns are definitely achievable as well. Now that you've determined what the capital base is that you need, the question is, how are you going to get there? What is the strategy you are going to use? There are endless strategies in real estate, so we're only going to go through a few of the most common ones in this video, but that should do the trick for you. And with each of these, there's pros and cons. There's no perfect strategy in real estate. It comes down to what resources you can bring to the table, how much time you have available or how much time you want to put into it. It also comes down to your personality traits. But we'll go through a few here. So renovations, it's a very simple one that most people know and can build up the skill set quite quickly. Buy and hold, or as I like to say, buy and hope. Strata titling, subdivisions, new builds, building luxury homes, building affordable homes, options or wholesaling property. So options and wholesaling is when you basically take control of a property, you have the right to purchase it, and you on-sell that right to purchase the property to someone else for a higher amount, so you make that profit. Now, each of these have different kinds of requirements. Some of these require a lot of time on site. So renovations initially typically require you to be on site a fair bit. As you build it into a successful business, you will learn how to take yourself off site more often. But you need to look at what requirements there are early days. Now, I know people that have learned quite quickly how to run renovations from interstate, or at the very least run them rather remotely because they've also been working a full-time job. So there are certainly ways to do that, but look at what time you have available to put into this. And then also look at what is your personality traits. If you don't like dealing with people very much, well, you probably want to decide to have a breakthrough in that space anyway, because ultimately real estate is a people game. But there are different strategies that require more involvement, more face-to-face time with people on a daily basis. So have a look at that, help that guide what strategy you choose for yourself. And my number one tip here is whatever strategy you choose, stick to it for at least 12 months before you're even considering changing. People often change strategy constantly thinking that the strategy is the problem. The strategy is not the problem. Your dedication and commitment to staying with that strategy until you've built the skill set to earn yourself your first deal or project is typically the problem. So once you've identified your strategy, the next is to identify your key target area. Being across multiple areas, multiple suburbs, doesn't make it easier to find a deal. It does certainly feel that way because you might find if you're sticking to a small area, you feel like there's just not enough possibility there. But the truth is the real opportunities exist between the cracks when you become an area expert. When you know that area like someone that has grown up in that area, you know why that side of the street sold for more than that side, why this end sold for more than this. You know the hot areas, you know the cold areas, you know all the little bits and pieces, and you start to pick up that intimate local knowledge, which is often where the opportunities exist. If you just have a look at 20, 30 suburbs and are constantly having a look at every property that comes up for sale, the reality is you're probably not going to find anything, or you're certainly not going to find anything great. Most of the best opportunities exist off the market. Once it hits the market, it's probably passed through the hands of many people like myself that have already rejected the deal. When selecting your target area, again, you need to consider things like how much capital can you bring to the table? What's the price point? Also, what is the price point of what you want to sell at the end, if you're selling or if you're renting? So there are several things you need to consider in choosing the right area for yourself. But again, once you choose one, and if it's a few suburbs, I would suggest no more than 3 to 5 suburbs. Once you choose it, do not shift area for at least 12 months. Because again, typically it's not the suburb that is the issue, it's the person putting enough energy into that suburb to find the right properties. Now, once you've chosen your strategy and you've chosen your area, the next thing is to learn your craft. Think big, but start small. As an example, if you've chosen subdivision as your strategy, I wouldn't suggest go out and look for 30 lot, 50 lot, 100 lot, 1,000 lot subdivisions. It's great to be ambitious. I'm really ambitious, but having done many subdivisions, I can tell you that choosing a project that is way bigger than your current skill set is more than likely going to end in ruin. And even if you do survive it emotionally, you're more than likely going to be had it by the end of it. So while that may frustrate the really ambitious ones out there, the best is to think big, start small. So again, subdivision example, start with a 1 into 2, 1 into 3 subdivision. Do a few of those, build your skill sets. That will start giving you an appreciation for how much stuff there is you don't know. And that will then prep you for moving to that next level of development or next level of deal, whatever it is that you're doing. I would suggest get a mentor. I would suggest becoming part of many communities that are doing similar things and even better, have already achieved those kinds of things. You want to surround yourself with people that consider it normal to be doing this kind of thing, because you will ultimately gravitate to whatever is normal in your community. So surround yourself with that, and you'll find that will help drastically in terms of your resilience to continue on through the tough times. We all have the tough times. Now, once we've figured out all that, you need to figure out what the right structure is for you. Now, this is something you should definitely speak with an accountant about, but one thing I can say is typically buying in your own name is not the right way to go about it. Very rarely is that the right way to go about it. Typically, best will be in a company, an LLC, a trust, or something along those lines. But again, that is definitely something you want to get expert advice on. Why this is important is not only for asset protection and protecting yourself, but also the flexibility that those entities can give you, not only for the way you can shift deals around, but also for tax effectiveness. Now, the next step may or may not be needed for some of you. I would suggest it's needed for everyone, depending on how ambitious you are, but it is learning how to raise capital. Now, even if you have your own money to start with, I'd actually recommend considering doing your first deal, at least partly involving an investor. The reason for that is it will help you build the skill set for how to raise money from investors in a low pressure environment. Because if you ultimately know you have the money there to step in if you need it, it's a much lower stress situation and a great way to build up that skill set. That could be involving them just taking a loan for an interest rate. It could be bringing them in as profit partners. Whatever's going to suit you, but I would highly recommend considering funding your first deal or your first project at least partly with an investor so you start building up that skill set. You don't want to be in a high pressure situation when you are first learning how to raise capital. This is a skill that takes time to learn. My first project, I needed to raise $70,000 from an investor, and for me at the time, that was high stress. That was, really putting the pressure on, and I had to have a lot of personal breakthroughs to actually make that happen. Now, several years later, I can raise a couple of $1 million in a very short period of time, and I barely have to think about it. But that's because I've spent many years raising capital and making all the mistakes along the way. So I'd suggest start early in low pressure situations. And now getting to the final parts is sell some, keep some. So we talked about building a capital base. Now it's most likely that keeping one is probably the wrong decision for the first few deals that you do. You probably should churn a few deals and sell them off to build up that capital base and build up the momentum. You can't really start keeping property too late, but you can start keeping property too early in this journey if you are looking to really speed up the results. If you're willing for the market to do its thing and just have that patience, then it's a different story. But if you're looking to really drive the result, build the capital growth yourself, then keeping property too early can impact your serviceability and really impact your momentum because it reduces the amount of capital you have available. And just psychologically, for most people, the less capital they have available, the less free they feel to go out and purchase multiple deals. When I've had the most capital around me, all of a sudden I have 3, 4, 5 deals on the table and we're going again. When I've ended up in situations where our capital's got very constrained, it's very hard to find a new deal. And then last of all is once you've built that capital base, transfer it into cash flow assets, and if you choose, go sit on a beach. I think you'll find in the property journey it's pretty exciting, and by the time you get to that point, you're probably not going to want to hang up the boots. You're just going to move on to the next step. But ultimately, you need that goal so that you can reach it and then decide for yourself, what do you want to do now? I hope that's been of value, guys. If you liked it, hit like. If you've got questions, put it in the comments, because if you've got questions around specific parts of this, I can create some new content to meet those exact needs. If you know of anyone that this could help, make sure you share it. Until next time, invest safely.